Welcome to Presentation, Ponder, Practice. Numbers sometimes have symbolic meaning, but readers need to be very careful with numbers and not go overboard with assigning meaning and symbolism to every number or in every case. However, there are some cases in which a clear body of evidence shows that a number is being used symbolically. In the set of numbers between 6 and 10, here are the key numbers in Holy Writing. 6 was the number of days God took to create all things, Exodus chapter 20 and verse 11. Humans were limited in their work to 6 days, Exodus 20 verses 9 and 10. The Israelites, when they walked around the walls of Jericho in silence, they took 6 days, Judges chapter 6 and verse 10. 7 symbolizes completeness or perfection. God completed his work of creation and then rested on the 7th day from all his work, which was perfect, Exodus 31 verse 17. The Sabbath day was a day of rest for God's people, Exodus 35 verse 2. Hebrew slaves were released, Exodus chapter 21 verse 2, in the 7th year at the completion of one's captivity or service. Every 7th year was a sabbatical year wherein even the land was to have rest. Leviticus chapter 25 verse 4. The Feast of Weeks or Pentecost comes 7 weeks after the first fruit harvest, Leviticus chapter 23 verses 15 and 16, coupled with Deuteronomy 16 and verse 9. Passover in Ezekiel 45 and the Feast of Tabernacles, Deuteronomy 16, lasted 7 days, as well as wedding festivals, see Judges chapter 14. Speaking of love, Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel, but was given Leah instead, so he worked an additional 7 years. Pharaoh's dream of 7 sleek and fat cows, then 7 ugly and gaunt cows, Genesis chapter 41 and verse 2. The walls of Jericho fell down flat after the 7th day of obedience to God's instruction, Judges chapter 6. Samson's hair was tied or braided in 7 thick locks of hair, Judges chapter 16. 7 demons had come out of Mary, Luke chapter 8 verse 2, speaking of the total number of evil spirits' possession within her. The clean but vacant life of a man will be repopulated by the evil spirit that has previously left him. And when it returns, it will take along with it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, Matthew chapter 12 and verse 45. In Acts chapter 6, when the number of men were selected to be put over the serving of tables in the congregation of the disciples, 7 men were selected. For the good guys, we find that there are 7 spirits of God, Revelation 3 verse 1, and 7 churches, Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3. The 8th day was a day of circumcision, Genesis chapter 17 and verse 12. The number 9 appears at the death of Jesus at the 9th hour. 10 has significant emphasis in the 10 Commandments, Exodus chapter 20. 10 plagues were sent on Egypt, Exodus chapters 7 through 11. 10 is sometimes considered to be a number of completion because of us having 10 fingers and 10 toes. Jesus used the number 10 in some of his parables. 10 virgins, 10 talents, 10 coins, 10 slaves were called, and one of them received authority over 10 cities in Luke 19 verses 13 and 17. The Bible also uses the number 10 in a vague way. Laban changed Jacob's wages 10 times, Genesis chapter 31 and verse 7. Daniel and his friends were 10 times better than all the other students in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king consulted them in Daniel chapter 1 and verse 20. As Nehemiah organized the rebuilding of the walls, Jewish settlers were warned of enemy attacks 10 times, says Nehemiah chapter 4 and verse 12. Psalm 12 verse 6 reads, "The words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace on the earth, refined 7 times. To help us with pondering these numbers, consider these thoughts. There is a time for work and a time for rest. Obedience to God must be given our utmost attention. There comes a time to set things free. Hard work does pay off. Then there may be a time for celebration. Service can be done by only one servant of God, but the efforts are more effective when people work together in serving God. I hope that you find something of interest to ponder. I pray that you will practice the things which will bring you closer to God, and I ask Him that He will bless you.